Hey everybody, how's it going? Andrew here, and I just have a little favor I was hoping you could help me with, and that is basically if you know of anyone that could benefit from listening to the show, share it with them. Let them know about Indie Game Movement. I mean, it would absolutely mean the world to us, but more importantly, like knowing that you could potentially help someone else with either questions that they have or that the content that we cover here on the show would be helpful for finding answers for things, for problems that they have. I mean, whatever it may be, if you know of someone who could get value out of this, it would just mean the world to us. And plus, you'd just be helping out your fellow community members too. So, again, I'm not looking for anybody to spam the show, to shout it out to everybody. Just if there's someone that you know that could really benefit from listening to Indie Game Movement, that would just mean the world to us and probably to them too. So thanks again for being such great listeners. And now let's get back to the show. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and this is episode 278, where we're going to be talking about using data to create impactful influencer campaigns. Now, we all know the importance influencers play in creating awareness for games. But despite this, many people don't always know exactly what information can be helpful to better tailor their campaigns or even help with other marketing efforts. That's why we're talking with Xavier Constantin of Streamforge to discuss the importance data plays in influencer campaigns and how that information can be applied to have a greater impact on your results. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey everybody, and we're back, and today with us I have Xavier from Streamforge. Xavier, how's it going? Thanks for joining us today.
I'm doing really well. Thank you, Andrew, for having me.
Yeah, of course. So, Xavier, please, if you don't mind, just introduce yourself. Tell us what you do for Streamforge. What is Streamforge? And then after you go into that explanation and sharing that with us, we'd love to hear what else you do in your personal time when you're not so busy working.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm the co-founder and head of marketing and business development at Streamforge. So to give a bit of context of what Streamforge is, we work in the influencer marketing industry. So we are one of the premier solutions for influencer marketing, and we work with publishers from all around the world to deliver highly targeted sponsorship campaigns to them. And we have our own proprietary data solutions. We have an engineering team with us, and the goal really is to create authentic connections between publishers, creators, and their audiences. So innovation is really at the heart of what we do at Streamforge. We love to push the boundaries of what's being done in the industry, and I guess we like to lead by example, if you will.
Nice.
On a personal level, I have over 18 years of experience in advertising and the marketing industry, and this really kind of led me to become an entrepreneur as well about 10 years ago, and ultimately, go using my personal experience in marketing and sales and advertising and my love for video games. I ended up co-founding Streamforge. So it's like a kind of mash between my professional passion and my personal passion, if you will. So been really lucky to work in such an amazing field. It's been kind of a dream of mine, if you will, for a while. I collect games. I'm a huge collector, and I also spent some time doing content creation in my past life, if you will. But I've always wanted to work in the video game industry, and I never thought I would end up, Streamforge would end up being what got me into the business, if you will. And especially coming from Montreal, there's like a huge scene here. There's Ubisoft, that hire like thousands of people, and there's so many other amazing publishers and developers. So yeah, I thought I would work for these guys one day, but I ended up launching Streamforge instead.
Nice. And you know what? That's such a nice story too, because I know from a lot of people, just in general in the industry, it's like they games are something they're very passionate about, and then they don't quite know like where that road will take them, and then going lo and behold, you discover that it develops into a career and all these other things. So it's really nice to hear that story. I know Victoria uh, Tran had a similar story where she wasn't doing anything game related and to start, but then later she did get into the industry through that. So
Yeah, it's a great industry to be in. Honestly, I haven't been in it for that long. Like I said, I have 18 years experience in advertising, marketing, but only 4 basically in the video game industry. And I came in this industry without any like basically virtually no contact really. Went to PAXs and Twitch cons and and shook some hands and made some contacts and made some friends and colleagues along the way, partners. But it's so like for me, I feel it's a real privilege to be able to go to say a convention or to an event and just be surrounded by people passionate about gaming. It's really wonderful. Like I don't know, I was at an event recently in Montreal and from gameplay space. It was a dev event, outside. I mean, it's nice to go to these places after what we went through in COVID, like during COVID, but just overall, just you could talk to anyone there and you have something in common with them. You love games, so
yeah,
that's just wonderful.
yeah, no, it definitely is, and I really appreciate you sharing that because again, like sometimes it's one of those things where people feel like, hey, I can't be a part of this, but really all it takes is from your own experiences just to have that same passion, and who knows what that can develop into. So, really appreciate you sharing that with us. But again, it almost seems like because even to some extent you're so passionate about this industry too and what you're doing as well that some of these things that you do in your spare time kind of like merge in. But let's say, are there any other activities you do on your own time that help you unplug, even if you are still somewhat plugged in?
Well, I love movies. I would say I'm a physical media collector. So I love to collect movies. I love to collect video games. I love to collect vinyls as well. So I love to be looking out for these types of medias, if you will, physical items. I love to do photography. Been doing it for 20 plus years. It's something that really helps me, unplug, as you said, and exercise. I think bicycle rides are great. I love to have a kid. I have a 4.5-year-old kid, so I love to play outside with them, run, play soccer and whatnot. Tennis, I guess, is a sport I really like, and everything artistic as well. Just drawing, photography, like I said, really helps me unplug.
That's awesome, and I mean it just what you're sharing sounds similar to some of my own interests in terms of having just a vast array of different like creative outlets and just other things to keep you fresh and on top of life in general. And I'm sure that also helps with the type of work that you're doing at Streamforge too, because it's always good to unplug a little bit. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think that I'm a very curious person, and I have a lot of interests. I'm just interested in life, I would say in general. So I'm always curious to like learn something new. And if you asked me like 5 years ago, I would have answered astrology, for example. Sorry, not astrology, astronomy. So I have a telescope, and I used to do this more. Now I don't got the time to do this anymore. At least I don't like to say I don't have the time. I don't take the time to do it anymore. But I think that it's and again, I'm sure if we talk in a couple of years, I'll have some more things that I'm interested in.
Awesome. Well, one thing that I'm interested in, and I'm sure a lot of listeners are too, is your answers to the Q box round that we have prepared. So, are you ready for the Q box round?
I am ready.
All right, excellent. And again, quick reminder for anybody who's not familiar, it's just a series of random questions we have prepared for Xavier today. So, let's take it from the top. Would you rather be water skiing or tubing?
I never water skied, but I would love to learn. So water skiing.
All right. Uh, I'm gonna change this one on the fly here for you, and I think you'll be able to still nail it, or maybe I don't know. It might be a hard one, but what's your
No,
favorite movie?
it's easy for me. I love so many movies. I just love movies in general. But there's one that's really close to my heart. Always has been and always will be. I think it's Lost in Translation, from
Ah,
Sofia Coppola.
yep.
It's not considered critically like like a great movie, but for me, I just love the vibe of the movie. I love Japan. I think like it really gets me to like travel to Japan when I watch this movie. The soundtrack is amazing. I love the relationship between Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson. For me, it's a movie. I think I watch this movie at least once a year, and that's been since it came out.
I gotta watch that one again. It's been years since I've seen it, but no, that's a good one. All right, peanut butter or chocolate?
Chocolate for sure.
And if you could be an animal, what would it be?
Yeah, I think I'd be a cat, and the reason being that if I'm gonna be an animal, right? I think I want to be cozy and be cuddled all day and just be safe. It's a crazy world out there, so I think you know, being a human being, I like to take risks. But as an animal, I think cat would be my answer.
Nice. That's a good one, and you know what? I think that's pretty relatable with a lot of people out there. Just the whole cozy factor. I love it. And then, last but not least, and the staple here on the show is what game are you playing now?
Well, that's a great segue because I'm currently playing Stray.
Ah,
And yeah, so I'm playing as a cat right now. I'm absolutely loving this game. I was super excited about this game since I saw it. I forgot if it was E3 back then or what it was, but when I first saw the announcement, it just connected with me, clicked with me. So I'm currently playing this. I love it. It's the type of game that I really enjoy, especially now being 37 years old with a wife and kid and not having as much time as I used to.
mm,
And I can sit down and finish the game within like a weekend or a couple of nights, if you will. It's a game that I think lasts around 5 hours or so, and it's not too challenging, so I can be tired a bit when I'm playing it. And yeah, just enjoy the vibe, and it's beautiful. And I think Annapurna has been just love their games in general. I
yeah.
think it really connects with me. Yeah.
Well, I obviously I've been hearing a lot about it too, and but I love that you're sharing those elements of it because I haven't looked too much into it, but just again, time can be limited with the family. I have a family of I have three kids,
Yeah,
so
well,
it's knowing that like there's not much involved in that. That's always good. Music to my ears, if you will, in terms of
yeah.
getting into some games and stuff. Cool.
It's a great dad game or mom game.
There you go.
Yeah.
We got the official dad game approval here. All right, great. So thanks for sharing everything about the Q Box round and learning a little bit more about you. But now I want to kind of just dive into the conversation that we're going to have today, which I think is a really interesting one and just loving to get into this, which is using analytics to create impactful influencer campaigns. So,
Yep.
with this, I just want to kind of like kick off our discussion here and providing some context that, a lot of people listening today understand the, importance that influencers have for helping studios create awareness for the games. So what I was curious though is what are the like strategic differences and advantages that sponsored campaigns, may have over other types of influencer campaigns. Let's say organic versus like sponsored or whatever. And if you could give us a little breakdown in terms of what those may look like from people in case they're not familiar with these terms and such.
Right. So, a paid campaign will definitely be some campaign where you pay, content creators to produce content for you. So you can have a little control over it. You can have more control over it, but you do have some control, which is one of the main differences between paid and organic or free. We could call it free as well. We
Yep.
don't call it that internally, but organic will be where you might reach out to creators, proposing them to or asking them to play your game and saying, I'll give you a key for the game, of course, obviously, but I'll give you a key for the game. if you play it, and but not offer money or anything else that comes with it. So I would say the main difference again is control. So when you're sending out a key, or people apply or ask for a key, and you filter through them, and you decide to give them a key for a free campaign or organic campaign, you don't control when they're going to do it or if they're going to do it at all, right? You're basically like hoping they do, and you typically end up sending out say a lot of keys but not getting a lot of content in return. And in terms of control, you don't control if they do it, but again, you don't control when they do it. And when you're launching a game, for example, it's really crucial that people, or that content creators play your game at launch. So you want content creators to really, on one day, kind of play all together, if you will. So when you're sending out keys, you can ask them to do it on that day, but the reality is they might not. And typically they don't really stick to that, because there might be like paid sponsorships that take over your game. So it's really, these are the main differences, I would say. Of course, when you do paid, you also, again, you have control on when they play the game, how long they play the game for. I think the verbiage as well. We don't typically like to control or tell them what to say exactly when we work with creators. We can give them context, of course, and we do, and we can direct them in certain way, like certain places, or ask them to talk about certain topics. But we don't like to dictate exactly what they say. So, but you do have some control over that. You can ask them to talk about certain features, if you will, of the game, and that's the main difference. Of course, when you do paid, you also, we can talk about this a bit later, but you can track how many people click on their links leading to Steam and so on and so forth. So the whole analytics side of things just blows the organic content out of the water, I would say.
Nice. Yeah. And thanks for going into further detail on that, because again, I think there's sometimes, especially calling out, that sponsored or paid doesn't mean, and that you get this control doesn't mean that you're taking control to the level of, hey, this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to play, because obviously it's not going to work for content creators, because they would never want to be dictated that, and plus it's not fair and ethical and all these other things. But I'm sure sometimes people may get these ideas that like paid means this extra level of control might be not in line with what is proper or right, I guess was a way to say that.
Well, it's even simpler than that for us and for me. It's we select these creators, we decide we want to work with these creators. We also want them to be themselves. We want them to be honest. We want them to be the same that they are whenever they do content to their audience, because that's why we selected them. Right. They got to this point because of who they are and what they do and how they do it. So why would we change this? Why would we force them to change the way they act? We always said, play the game. We're confident because of the way we target these creators. We know they're going to love the game, right? And we also value their feedback. So if they have feedback about the game, then please share it. All we ask is that they stay respectful. But I think that's just, that's just the way everything should be in life. Just respect others,
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I agree. And that's actually a really good segue into another area I wanted to talk about, which is essentially creating impact. So as you mentioned here, when you're doing an influencer campaign, you're looking for content creators that are obviously going to align with, the studio's game, or at least like one that they're interested in and such, right? But knowing that, how important would you say it is to also keep the creators and their audience's interests in mind? Because sometimes I think that's something people forget about. It's like, hey, we get in front of this creator and they're going to promote our game, but how important is it to really understand that creator and their audience?
I would say it's not important, it's crucial. It's crucial for the success of the campaign. It's crucial for your relationship with that creator. Creators get literally spammed sometimes, dozen, hundreds of times a day, sometimes, and they're offered just random games. And what's being said is basically, and how it's being received by these creators, we know because we work and talk to them every day. It's, hey, you're a content creator, play our game, please. And maybe there's money attached, maybe not, but it doesn't go beyond that. It doesn't take who they are as a content creator into consideration, and it certainly doesn't take their audiences into consideration. So I think, influencer marketing is changing, and this is like one of the main things that is changing, and that needs to change as fast as possible, because we hear it all the time. Like, creators, it matters to them that they're being considered. It's not good for their business to accept deals that they don't have an interest in.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that making sure that the creator is interested in your game is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, because again, it goes into line with what you were saying before. You want to make sure that they're generally interested in such, and if they're just doing it for the money, they're not doing anybody favors. They're not doing their audience a favor, and they're definitely not helping out that relationship that they established with companies like yourself that are it's just not fair and right and it's not helping them either.
It's really not. I mean, their numbers are going to go down. People are going to know. Like, for example, you take a Twitch creator, for example, right? They're live. They're playing the game live. Like, their audience is going to watch that creator play the game, and they're going to be using #sponsored, #ad, and they can say they play a game they don't really care about, but they got offered a lot of money for it, right? They can say they love the game as much as they want, but if they don't really love it, their audience is gonna, see it through, see that the way they act, the way they interact with the game, it's gonna show in some ways, that they're not really into the game. So I think what's gonna happen is people are gonna associate the creator playing sponsored game as, well, they're not. He's doing it for the money. He's not doing it for because he loves the game. He's not respecting us because he doesn't take us into consideration when accepting these deals, because this is a game that we don't really care about. It's not his typical type of game that he plays, for example, that we watch him play, or her. So it's just going to have this, I guess, this waterfall effect, or this domino effect, I should say, of negatively impacting everybody involved, and also the industry as a whole. I think, continuing to get creators to play games and audiences to watch sponsored content that is not in line with their interest is detrimental to the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? While you were talking about that, it got me thinking too, because you mentioned relationships, and obviously those are important too. And I'm kind of curious as well, like with these relationships that are being established, like what ways can sponsored campaigns or paid campaigns even strengthen that relationship and potentially deliver greater results for games that are trying to get awareness?
Well, it goes back to my previous point. I don't mean to sound like a broken record here, but ultimately is to take their interest into consideration. Again, you want to start on a good note. So if you reach out to a creator and you present to them a game that they care about, that you validated that they care about, they're going to, first of all, they're going to respond. They're going to be excited about it. They're going to think, well, these guys care about me, and even care about my audience. I don't even know them, and they're showing that they care about me. I'm telling you, it's so refreshing. We hear it all the time. Creators, they tell us, they write to us, they tell you. We've heard things like, "You're the first one." I'm telling you, it's a shame. You're the first one. I'm not talking about small creators, like some decent sized creators. You're the first one that seemed to be taking my interest at heart and in consideration for sponsored campaigns. It's crazy. So, I mean, I didn't know how bad it was, but it's pretty bad. And I think that's the first step, is to take them in consideration, take their interest into consideration, and you're already you're going to have a great first impression with these guys, and it's a great way to start a relationship. And then of course you can, just engage with them and be respectful throughout the process, and just have a professional approach, and not lowball their offers. Be more aware of what they're, what type of price you should be paying these guys, which can be tricky a lot of the times. But but I think just again, taking their interest at heart is a great way to start a long-term relationship with these guys.
Yeah, and you know what? One thing that you mentioned too that I thought was really cool is the example where the influencer was like, "Wow, this is the first time anybody has done this." And I've in the past ran some organic campaigns before where it's a little extra work, but calling out to certain things or actually showing that you do care and paying attention to them. I've had similar responses, like people are like, "Wow, you're like the only one who actually noticed that and called out to it," and it makes them feel important. And again, goes back to our whole theme there in terms of how this can really help create impact. And again, in doing so, I mean, as we shared and discussed, I'm sure people can then see, well, this is the type of impact that can come from these types of relationships and everything. And then caring for them as a creator and caring for them for their audience, you could probably expect potentially even greater results than you may would have if you just shot it over, be like, hey, could you cover this? Here's some money. Right?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And, these guys, our goal is not to make them feel important, because they are important. I mean, we're in the influencer marketing industry. Like, without these guys, there's no industry. Bottom line, plain and simple, right? So it's why I'm going back to respect. It's why I'm going back to, respecting their interests. The goal is not to make them feel important. I mean, I'm sure it does, but it's just to acknowledge that they are important and that we're in this together, right? And whenever we work on a campaign or whenever we develop a product, we always ask ourselves, like, okay, who are the people involved in this product or this project, and how are we creating value for everybody involved? And it's such an important aspect of what we do. We have conversations with creators all the time. We have conversations with publishers and developers all the time to make sure that value is created across the board. And doing this just elevates everybody's life, I think, or just in general in life. When you take people in consideration, when you consider them for who they are, then everybody wins, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, thank you for elaborating a little bit more, but now I want to kind of shift the direction a little bit and kind of like a little bit of the main focus that we're here to talk about, which is, collecting data and how to use data, because it's, with influencer campaigns, we're not necessarily always thinking about data. We're just thinking about getting the word out, right?
Yep.
So when running a campaign, like, what are some KPIs that you generally look for that provide insight or understanding of how the campaign is performing?
So KPIs are generally, of course, we have a lot of data and we have a lot of data points that could become KPIs, if you will, but it's typically led by the client. So our client's going to tell us, for example, we have clients that are looking at the amount of content that's being created. So when they're launching a game, they want, X amount of videos / streams to be created. Others will look at sales and so on. So engagement and all that. So ultimately, we have access to all that information. We look at all that information, but looking at once, like for a specific KPI, it's really kind of like the client, if you will, that is going to be deciding, I guess, internally what matters most to them. But again, sales, being able to track sales nowadays in 2022 is quite common, especially when you're using platforms like Steam, right? So, of course, if you're using the Switch or PlayStation or Xbox, I mean, it becomes much trickier, if not impossible, to do it.
Yep.
But thank God we got Steam, which allows us to track from the audience that is watching the creator specifically and what their path was and if they've ended up buying the game or wish list the game, or all that information that is basically available to us.
Now,
So yeah,
I was just going to ask, when you're saying that's available, is that through like Steam's backend? Is it something else? I'm just
it's a mix of things, but Steam UTM links
okay.
are
Yep.
are quite useful, right? So it's not perfect because obviously, if you want to have the full picture, I mean, it's basically impossible because
Yeah.
some people, like, we're talking about Steam, so you know I have Steam open all the time on my computer, and that's my work computer. Steam is open; it's there. It just runs in the background, and when my day is done and I got some time, I may play a game or two. But if I see a creator, I'm taking me as an example because I know a lot of people are like this as well. They're going to see a content creator play a game. They might go straight to their Steam app and search for the game there instead of clicking on it. Because when you click on it, you get to the website, and then you may not be logged in to the website. So then you might end up being like, well, you know what? I'm just going to go to my app. It's already open. So you do lose some information there. But you do also get really valuable information because people do click on those links, they get to Steam, they do log in, and you do get sales numbers. And you get sales numbers, you get activation numbers, you get wishlist numbers, and you get a lot of numbers. And at the end of a campaign, you can aggregate those stats because you're going to get, for example, the total amount of clicks, and then you're going to lose some of them because they're going to go outside of the website. They might go straight to their Steam app. So they're going to stop being tracked, if you will. So you're going to end up with a tracked set of data, which then you can use to aggregate with the amount of clicks you got. And then there's also some obviously some audience that have went straight to the Steam app, but you won't be able to track this. But it's not perfect, but it's the best we have, and it's really great to have, especially in general, but especially when you compare to what we have for console, or the lack of tools we have for console.
And I love that you're sharing that too, because and I know this for the most part is fairly common information, but when you were talking about actually aggregating this information, and this is actually a strategy I use myself with like for paid ads for like Facebook advertising, for example. I'm sure to some extent you can do this too, and you might not need to because of these relationships that you already have with influencers, but you go and take all the amount of like tracked visits or clicks that people are going that arrived to the page or activated the game or whatever from those from the influencers, and then you can kind of maybe determine, let's say if you have two influencers that are maybe similar with each other, but one is way more engaged in terms of driving traffic than the other. Like that can be really helpful information to further like maybe think of other different ways to create those campaigns or whatever. I'm just throwing things out there, but I don't know if some of those things are to the extent. But again, it goes back to you saying all this information is super helpful to really kind of drill down in this data and start making other decisions based off of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think after we're done with a campaign, we always look back at the data. It's not just here's your report, client, take it and go on with your life. We look at it as well, and we look at the results. And the question we always ask ourselves is, could we have done better, right? And what could we improve moving forward? The algorithm that we build, with the engineering team, is constantly evolving. I mean, that's the nature of an algorithm, right? So we always look back at the data. That's the only way, really, that we can optimize what we do and stay unbiased, really, which is the goal, right? So, yeah, of course, I think that kind of information is something that we value very highly. And in a case of, say, a game that has different cycles, for example, goes out as early access and then has a plan to release in 12 months full launch, right? So a client might want to do a early access sponsorship, like influencer marketing campaign, and one for launch. So the early access group of creators we hire, we're going to look back, and then, for example, we might decide to hire some of them again. We typically do because of how successful these campaigns are typically, but we might want to try other people instead of some creators that may have not performed as well. It's possible, but the idea is not to push them aside and be like, oh, you didn't perform well, so let's not hire you again.
Right.
It's more like, what happened? Why did this person, which we knew, or we were pretty much sure that they would perform well. Also, by the way, just want to say, it's relative to the campaign's global performance, right? It doesn't mean they necessarily performed badly. It means they have not performed as well as others. But we need to look deeper and dig deeper to get the answer of what happened. Why did they underperformed relative to the global campaign performance?
Yeah, and it sounds like a really good benchmark that you set for yourselves there in terms of, asking these types of questions and really considering these things and obviously using these informations to be decisive with what types of questions you're asking to get to the answers that you're looking for. Now, speaking of information, though, I was curious because you talked about how you could take all this information after a campaign and kind of analyze it further. But what is there any possibility that like you could collect information as campaigns are happening? Let's say live or currently in the middle of a campaign, that you can maybe take some of that information and learn from it and like change things on the fly or not, or whether it relates to the campaign itself, or even what if it's even information that could be helpful for a studio or a publisher that may have other marketing campaigns. So is there anything that you can learn and relay that information to others or use yourself to benefit from in the moment?
So the way we work when it comes to launching campaigns, we have a dashboard, right? So clients log on to their dashboard, they see real-time data. So all the data is available to them. When it comes to changing things on the fly, we don't really do this because, working on a campaign like this requires weeks of work, getting the contract signed and all this stuff. So, for example, if we've hired a creator for X amount of hours, we're not going to tell them you're not performing well. Like we're cutting your sponsorship in half or something like this, right?
Right.
Obviously. So, and it happens fairly fast in general because content typically will be done within a day, right? For the launch campaign, or maybe it's a week. It depends. But ultimately, what we do is we look back at the data for the campaign. We're confident in what we do because of the way we target these creators, which is something unique in this industry. And we know they're going to perform well. So there's not much we can do on the fly. It's more about, again, looking back at it and continuously optimize our tools and our products.
Yeah. Again, it's important too, because like, a lot of times I think in some cases, and I can relate to this with like paid ads, it's great to get that live data coming in, and obviously it's much different when we're talking about having these agreements with these with these content creators. But sometimes it could be like, oh, you kind of want to do that, but at the same time, it's really important to kind of let things run their course, because that's where you're really going to get all that aggregate of information to really make the best types of decisions, opposed to just little pieces that are coming in and making calls on that, because you don't really know the full story.
Yeah, and we're confident in what we do. We've been working on these tools and this algorithm for 4 years, right? And very smart people, which I'm not part of, in the engineering team. We just hired, by the way, like David Boyd, who is the creator of Sully Gnome. So he just joined the team. So really, really smart guys working on everything that's happening in the background. And we're very confident in what we're doing. So when we launch a campaign, we know at that moment in time, we have the best roster we can have, plain and simple. But as life tends to work, afterwards you can look back and be like, okay, that's how we can look back and say, what could we have done better? How can we continuously evolve and get better at what we do? And so it's that constant kind of will to innovate and to evolve, I guess, or optimize what we do that keeps us going.
Yeah, and you know what? I I really love that confidence that you have in saying, because I honestly, it feels somewhat refreshing to me, because for you to say that, and I know you're not, you know, trying to be cocky or anything like that, but the way you said that, and to say like we're confident that we're leading with the best roster possible, and then afterwards it's just a matter of optimizing and improving upon that. I mean, that says a lot, and I don't think that's a statement you can just throw out there for it to sound good either. And I don't know, I just calling out on that, and no, I'm not trying to like pump up Xavier or Streamforge here, but seriously, I mean, if you're hearing that for the first time, and someone exhibits that, I mean, for me, that sounds awesome. Like leading in with the best foot forward, and plus, again, I think it even goes back to what you were saying before, and it relates to the context you provided with your intro. Like 20 years of experience and stuff, I'd feel good about hearing that when people are leading in with that. So sorry, I totally digressed here, everyone, but I that just really called out to me, because when people can speak that confidently and everything else, and it says a lot about it. So, anyways, I went off a little bit there too much, so apologize.
No, I mean it. I'm glad it resonates with you. It's just the way that you know. I like to work with the team. Is we believe in what we do, and we've done our homework to get to where we are. That's just yeah. I don't know if it sounds cocky or not, like you said. I mean, but it's believing in yourself. I think is very important, and
Yeah.
I think if you're doing anything in life, like you should believe in your in what you're doing. And if you don't, maybe you shouldn't do it.
Nope, that great words right there. So I want to kind of like, you started talking about this a little bit and everything, and I want to go a little bit more in terms of like optimizations and stuff. So like some things you mentioned were like, hey, look, we've had a good track record with this particular influencer, but it didn't work as well because all this is relative, all this is dependent on so many other factors and stuff. So like I'm just curious too, like from these types of optimizations, from these learnings, you have this dashboard that can provide it. What else can be, and it's a little bit out of your area of expertise, but I just wanted your opinion. What else from these campaigns, from these learnings, do you think could be applied to other campaigns that these studios or publishers are making, so that way they're getting even more out of these types of campaigns? Like, what are like other things that could happen? You think that people can learn from these campaigns with influencers?
Yeah, so it does go out of my area of expertise a little bit, but not too much since I work very closely with all our clients. I think that the first thing I want to say is when you're doing a campaign, and I'm going to speak for the way we do it, but I think it should apply for every campaign out there. No, like if you're releasing one game, let's call it game A, and you have a set list of creators, and you're releasing game B 6 months later, which is a different game, could be similar, but even it's a different game. You shouldn't use the same list that you used for game A. No list should be recycled or duplicated.
Mm.
You can use we worked with some creators for many campaigns, but every single campaign is fully custom and tailored to that specific game, and even like I said earlier, to that specific stage the game is in. So the roster we're going to use for early access will definitely be different than the one we use for the full launch, because again, more creators have came in, more creators have maybe started playing new games that didn't exist 12 months ago. Some creators maybe underperformed relative to the campaign's performance, so we may want to try someone else. Like, all these things come into play. So a list shouldn't be reused for other campaigns. That being said, there's a lot of data in those campaigns that can be looked at and takeaways that can be taken from it. But what comes to mind the most when it comes to some of the data that is being used is that we at Streamforge have a way to find what games people interested in your game own on Steam. And we use that for our targeting algorithm. So the way it works, in a nutshell, I'll try to keep it super simple, but ultimately you have a game. We're going to take a list of similar games and put that into our targeting algorithm, and it's going to come out with a list of the creators that have the highest affinity, which means that they are the most, interested ultimately in your game because of the games they typically play on stream. And we're going to have that information for their audience as well, the type of games their audience likes to watch on Twitch, for example, or YouTube. But to get that list of games, initial list of games for targeting, we use that tool that again tells us the type of game people that are interested in your game owns. So that type of information can be really useful for the marketing department, for example, at a client's, right? Yeah. So if they want to reference to, like, say they want to write a description of the game or reference to certain games, like older games, right? To say like, oh, our system is similar to this game. Well, it's good for them to know what games people that care about their upcoming game owns, so they can reference to the right game so that it resonates with their audience. So I'm not sure if I'm even following myself right now, but that's it in a nutshell.
No, I mean, that makes complete sense. And I mean, just from you saying that, like, again, that's a lot of other information. Yes, it's primarily focused and to, reach out and find those right creators and everything. But the more you know about the creators, the more you know about the audience, then the more helpful that information is going to be, I would say, for any marketing effort. As you said, because as you start peeling kind of those layers and understanding those areas a little bit more in terms of like, okay, maybe now this information that your platform has can provide more information or more insight, let's say, to learning more about the audience, learning more about user behavior, learning so much more information to the point where ultimately it gets down to, hey, how are we able to communicate and resonate with them very well? So, no, I think that was a great example in terms of showcasing how just from, we're talking about influencer campaigns, but just from how you guys do things can provide that much more information that can be extremely helpful to the rest of the studio or developer from a marketing and understanding their audience perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, this idea, by the way, came from a client. It's by working with clients, by sharing what data we have, like they're the one working on these games. They're the ones developing, promoting these games, like working very closely with publishers, developers is crucial in this business. Again, to understand what their needs are. And yeah, more often than not, clients come out with great ideas, and we just, a lot of the things we've done is just we've discussed with the client. They had a problem, we came up with a solution, and that became a product. So it's just having a lot of data can be a head scratcher because you're like, okay, what do we do with this data?
Right. Yep.
And yeah, so we love to share and to talk about what we have with the people we work with, and just brainstorm and solve problems that they have.
Yeah, and that's totally the entrepreneur coming out, like making those statements and stuff. But it's true too. It's like listen to problems and come up with solutions. And
well, that's what business is.
Yeah,
ultimately,
exactly.
like people talk about business like, oh, I want to make money, I want to be an entrepreneur. It's like, guess what? You're skipping a step here. You need to be solving a problem first. I mean, you're not going to make money if you don't got a problem to solve.
Yep, absolutely.
And if you don't love solving problems for others, and you don't care for for people you work for, then I mean, you're not money's not going to come. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I have one more question before we start to close, because and this one is always top of mind for me and things like that. But I'm just curious, like, as you mentioned, campaigns are unique, they're custom tailored, and there's no there's nothing really predictable about what type of results you can get all the time because it just doesn't work that way. But I was just wondering, based off of how you guys do things and what you've been learning and all the optimizations from having various projects, is it do you think that in some cases it can be possible for some campaigns to kind of deliver predictable results or anticipated results? I know you can't 100% predict it, but you think that's possible?
I do think it's possible to predict loosely, I would
Mm-hmm.
say, because as you said, I think it's impossible to know what, I mean, nobody
Yeah,
can read the future, obviously,
right.
but predictability is something that we're really like interested in. What I'll say is that engineers are working on things that um, we're just interested in this aspect of predicting results. It's very difficult to do, and to say the least. But we also love really difficult things. So, um, yeah, hopefully, um, it becomes something concrete in the future from us or from anyone else. I think it's a great thing to work on because that's one of the biggest hurdle when it comes to influencer marketing. You have in the history of the business as well, where it's data wasn't a big part of it, and it still isn't enough, in my opinion, to be
Mm,
quite frank. That's we want to change this, but data exists, data is available, but say you want to do influencer marketing and you have $50,000 to invest in it, and you've never done influencer marketing before, right? You're just starting, like it's the first time you're even thinking about it, and $50,000 for a lot of companies. Oh, there are a lot of companies. Is a lot of money.
mm,
And I could have taken a lower number as well, like 10,000, 5,000. That's a lot of money for a lot of people still. So you're investing that money into influencers, and a lot of people will be like, "Well, what am I getting in return? You know,
right.
what can I expect in return?" And we're being asked this question a lot of the times, and we don't like those types of questions, to be quite honest, because we don't want to be like guaranteeing anything. It doesn't work that way, right? Because we're using human brains to try to predict the future, which has never been a very successful business, if you will, right? But using computers to do it can be much more effective. So I think that it's going to be very helpful for whoever comes up with that product for the whole business industry, because it's it's a big hurdle. Again, people want to know like what they're going to get in return for investing money into influencer marketing, and sometimes it's a deal breaker for some
Hmm.
right now.
But it sounds like I mean, it looks like it's something that's at least on the horizon that can definitely be a potential or at least closer to getting to that point because, like we said, it's never going to be 100%, but there's from your expertise and doing this as long as you have been doing it, you definitely see that possibility and in the ability to work towards that as happening, um, predictability happening more often than not. So that's really encouraging to hear because you're right. This is a big part of the industry between creators and helping create awareness and stuff. So knowing that this is something that people are working towards and is possible to work towards is well honestly sounds really exciting for me too. So
That's great to hear.
all right. Well, thank you for addressing that. Now, before we close, though, I would love for you to just, share maybe like 3 suggestions or tips that you have, because we covered quite a bit. So if you have a few that you could share with us where people could really, what the main takeaway from our conversation would be, I think that they would find that super helpful.
Yeah, I got a couple of tips for you guys. I think the first one is if you're looking for a publisher, right? Because a lot of indie devs are, challenge them on what they're doing for influencer marketing. I think that's and what data they're using in their process. I think that it's going to be, and obviously I'm biased towards that industry, but I do think it's going to grow more and more over the years. And I think working with people that have a vision for like long-term vision for this industry and that side of marketing is important, especially when you're a developer and you're about to sign a deal, or you're looking to sign a deal with these publishers. You're basically giving them the rights in a sense to promote your game. Sometimes fully, sometimes in part. It depends on the deal, of course, but still, I would say have a talk about how they see this this side of the or they see influencer marketing moving forward. That's the first one. Second one is if you're going to do any reach out to creators, go with quality over quantity. And, that's the second tip. Should have been first, to be quite frank. First in terms of priority, like that's the number one thing we all need to change. We need to respect the creators more when reaching out to them. And I know a lot of people do, but more people need to do it as well. And if you're reaching out, like let's not mass email these guys, right? Let's respect the fact that they have their interests, they have their audiences that have their own like interests as well. And if you're not using data to do it, it's all right. But just take the time to really kind of make sure that that person is curated, and you're not again mass emailing these guys. You're gonna be getting a lot more from this in short term, I think, but long term for sure. By improving your relationships with content creators, with results, you're going to save time, frankly, and that's my second tip. And my third tip is actually, if you guys would love to hear from you, actually. It's something that we've been talking a lot about. We use a lot of technology and data and all that. We've primarily been working with publishers, but we've been super interested in seeing what we can do for indie devs moving forward. And there's obviously something we can do, and we have ideas, but maybe you guys have ideas too. So I'd love to hear from you guys and have conversations about this. And so please, love to hear from you.
Yeah, and that's really awesome to open that up. And again, it goes back to what you're saying before, from working with clients and everything, and getting a better understanding of what's important to them. What are these problems that people are having, and how can it be done to solve these things? So with that said, I mean, guys, if you have problems or questions even about this, and what can help you out, I mean, Xavier's just said, hey, reach out, and I'll be happy to do that, I'm sure, within reason and what time you have available. So if that being the case, what is a good way people can reach out to you, Xavier, or go to Streamforge to get more information? And also, I understand you have a podcast too. So let us know about all these things that people can check out if they want to reach out to you or learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, again, don't be shy to reach out. Like, I'm so passionate about this that I'll take, the time it needs to talk with you guys. I really look forward to it. Website, streamforge.com. You can find more information about what we do there. If you guys want to reach out to me directly via email, that's Xavier@streamforge.com. So Xavier @streamforge.com. I'm also on Twitter at Xav or Xav, Xav Constantin, Constantin. And on LinkedIn, my full name, Xavier Constantin. On LinkedIn, I'll be there as well. And we have a podcast, a weekly podcast. We actually interview content creators, and we're actually just interviewed the guys behind TMNT Shredder's Revenge attribute as well. So we're kind of opening up our roster to devs as well. So maybe there's an opportunity there to to talk with some of you guys. But so the podcast is Streamforge Radio. It goes out on every Tuesday. I'm actually the host of the podcast. So yeah, we talk to content creators, get to know them a bit better, talk about just topics to get to know the person behind the camera, if you will, or behind the screen, if you will. So that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And again, everybody, please don't hesitate. Reach out to Xavier if you have questions or just want to talk to him about this stuff. It's a great way to get things addressed. And streamforge.com. and his socials. And of course, all this information will be on the show notes and, to check out the podcast, Streamforge Radio. And Xavier, where do you guys have the podcast? Where is it listed?
It's literally everywhere. We have it on YouTube. It's actually a video podcast as well, but we're on Apple, we're on Spotify, on every single podcasting platform. So, yeah, very easy to find, Streamforge Radio.
Awesome. Well, Xavier, thank you so much for today. Really insightful stuff, and just appreciate you being on the show.
Well, thank you, Andrew, and thanks everyone for listening.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. If you enjoy and value the show's content, you can support us even more by going to Patreon and visiting www.patreon.com/IGM podcast and select the tier that best suits your needs. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.